All right. So a couple people at home who just must know about the Blacksash test, and then some people here in the dojo, at least one person. So the last meditation talk that you will have heard was by Miss Macy. She talked about the internal retreat, and I'm sure she did a great job. This time, I'm going to talk about what I did this last weekend, the Blacksash test in Michigan. So for those of you who don't know, it's very hard to get a Blacksash in this style of martial arts. In fact, you should not make that your goal because it's ridiculous. It's kind of like, I'm thinking about getting into politics. What's your goal? A president, obviously. There's a difference. Somebody described our school as like the difference between, it was like whenever there's a Sash test and it's like you're getting to the next grade almost, it's like the difference between graduating from your local middle school and graduating from Harvard. I've never gone to Harvard. I assume that it's not as hard as getting a Blacksash under Sifu Brown. So it's a hard thing. It's very rare. My Sifu's had approximately 20,000 students. That's my best estimate. I don't know. I know it's at least 12,000 because when I got my Blacksash, I was one of the first 4 Blacksashes at that school, and he had already had 12,000 students, and that was 11 years ago. So now he's had 10 there and 1 more at our second school in Rochester. And it is such an incredible test and such a rare thing that I go back to every single Blacksash test. So I went back, and this was John Moises' Blacksash test. He is an awesome student. He's been practicing with my Sifu for 15 years. And there's a lot that goes into this. So part of it, and some of you have heard the general gist of the Blacksash kind of journey, is after you've been studying for a long time at the school, then it is a slim possibility that at some point you'll be invited to participate in the Blacksash test. And there's a 3-year period that goes before the actual, what you would think of as the test, but it's all part of the test. And this is, I'm not going to get into too much of the detail here because it's kind of a secret, but there are like disciplines and things that you decide that you want to do as part of your practice and for yourself in your life. And you have to stick to these things. And if you don't, you fail the test and you have to restart. So it's a thing. The actual test week, where after you've finished your 3-year disciplines and now it's time to do what most people think of as the test, is grueling. I mean, it is so hard. And I only got to see the second half of John Moises' test, but I saw him walk in. And let me tell you, Mr. Moises is 49 years old. He is, I believe, the oldest person to take this test and will possibly be the oldest person to ever take this test. It will kill you if you're too old. But he looked pretty good. He looked bad, but he looked good for somebody who had already gone through 3 days of the test, because there's a night where it's hours, like a normal test, just hours of doing forms all night. Another night, just hours of doing chin-off, throws, weapons defense. And then another night, which is hours of doing sparring and grappling. And each one of these nights would be like a full test. But for the Blacksash, no, you got to stack them night after night after night. And then I got there on Thursday night, where I got the chance to practice with John, and he was looking really good. We were doing a lot of throws. And then he gave a meditation talk, which was Sifu Brown and us, the other Blacksashes who were there that night, were asking him questions about martial arts. And I really loved this. John Moises he's very good physically. He works incredibly hard. But I'd say one of his biggest standout traits for sure is he's so humble. And he would have been fine to never take the Blacksash test. He is one of those people who is just like, I don't necessarily know that I deserve it, but I'm fine. I'll do whatever you want me to do, Sifu. If you tell me to test, I'll take the test. If you tell me not to test, I'll practice forever without taking the test, whatever you say. And that's, you know, when I say it that way, it doesn't sound like humble. That sounds like I just do, I'm a follower and do whatever. But he just truly enjoys being on the mats and doesn't take anything for granted. It doesn't think that he deserves. And he's not like, I've been practicing for 15 years. How come I don't have a Blacksash yet? And a lot of people are like that. And those people quit because they're not ready for a Blacksash if they think they deserve it. So he stayed. And it got to a point where Sifu Brown was like, you're too good. You got to take the Blacksash test. So here he is. And from him talking on Thursday night about his journey and his practice, it's just so obvious how humble he is. He said a lot of amazing things, but one of the best moments was everybody asked a question, and then the last person asked a question was Miss Donahue. Miss Donahue is like the Catherine Macy of the school in Michigan. She is the person who kind of helps run everything, and probably without her, the whole place would fall apart and burn to the ground. So she asked the question, and her question is, how can we help you? That was her question to John. And that's just because that's who she is. She's always there to help. And his answer was, please, you've done so much already. You have done way more than I could ever ask. So my answer to your question is, what can I do to help you? And this is really the attitude for a great partner, which you must be if you're going to be a Blacksash. You can't be a jerk and just be beating people up if you're a Blacksash, which is, by the way, the opposite of the way that it is in most schools. In most schools, the highest ranking people are the biggest jerks. They're the people who are all ego and just trying to keep everybody down by pounding on them. And it's very different in our style, and our philosophy is you should be a great partner. And really, that is the question that you should always be asking. How can I help you? What can I do to make you better right now? What can I do to give you the best experience to help you get great? And when we are able to do that, we are able to set aside our own ego, our own selfish desires, and just be there for our partner. It is huge. It is massively important for our own practice to be able to be that selfless. And it's something that we really want to practice from the very beginning. So whenever you catch yourself starting to have this mindset that sounds like, oh, I don't like practicing with this person because they don't, give me enough of a challenge, or I don't like practicing with this person because they give me too much of a challenge, or whatever it is. Set all of that aside. That's ego. In this moment, it is, how can I help my partner have the best possible experience? And when your partner is also doing that for you, you mesh in a way that is incredible. The energy that is there with you and a partner when you're both being selfless and you're both just there for each other is amazing. It's something that I think is sorely missing in this world, in martial arts and just everywhere in the world, to be selfless and to just be there for each other. So that was one of the first things that I noticed. There is a whole grueling test, and at the end of it, there is a demonstration on Saturday where John Moises and some of the other Blacksashes and some of the other senior students will demonstrate. And we'll demonstrate a lot of things from the test. He's demonstrating his forms. Some of us demonstrated flying kicks, which are not on the Blacksash test. You cannot do a single flying kick except for the flying kick in fourth form, which is a flying stomp kick, which anybody can do. You cannot do a single flying kick and still get a Blacksash. So it's going to be all right. And it's also definitely not going to be all right. But the craziest part of the demo is usually multiple attackers. And so part of the thing that I got to participate in was that multiple attackers. First, he did, I think, 3-on-1, which is very hard. And then he had 5 attackers, and Sifu Brown graciously gave him a friend. So another student Aaron Kratz came out, tough, great guy, great partner. And they were like, I got to keep my partner safe, but at least I have a buddy against these 5 other people. I remember the 5-on-1 during my test was the part that sticks out the most. One of the things that the other Blacksashes kept saying during the test was, man, now that I'm looking at this, I remember that this was in my test, but I blocked it out of my memory because it's so traumatic. And I felt the same way. Like, I vaguely remember some of the details, but most of it is just from looking back on all the pictures that I have from the test. And I don't remember most of it until I look at the picture or until I see somebody else taking the test. But one of those things was, the only thing that I remember vividly was 5-on-1 sparring. I was practicing with 5 very skilled killers. And at some point, I think they threw me on the ground, and one of them, who I will not say his name, but I remember him very well, punched me and accidentally, I'm positive, got me in the ear, my left ear. And since I had my eardrum perforated earlier on in life, a couple of years before, it's very easy to get your eardrum perforated again. I don't think that it would have happened this time if it had not previously been perforated. So, happens. This is disorienting. I do not like having my eardrum perforated. And if you ever have this happen to you, you'll freak out. You'll think that you're deaf and you'll think that you're dying. And it sounds like half of your head is in a cave, and it sounds like, and it's freaky as anything. So this happened, and I knew immediately what it was, and I looked up at him and I swore for the first time ever in the dojo, and I said, "You B word." And I immediately felt bad, and I just went back to practicing and let it go, and it was fine. But that is how rough it is it finally made me swear once in the dojo. So John Moises gets through all of that, and then on Saturday night is this beautiful ceremony called the Camisa, and it's taken from a tradition where after practicing late into the night, senior students and the teacher, the Sifu or the sensei, would go out and drink and talk about practice and talk about, life and get kind of deep into it. So there's this great part of the Camisa where senior students come, Blacksashes are lined up, and we give toasts to the different founders of martial arts that you see pictures up here, and then toasts to the student who's testing for his Blacksash. And it's really beautiful. And part of this is the Blacksashes and other people like Sifu Brown and Miss Donahue will stand up and give a little bit of a speech, kind of just like a paper that you would write for a test. But we talk about martial arts, and we talk about John Moises in this case. And so I said a few things, basically the stuff that I've already said. He works super hard. He is super humble. And the third thing I said was he's unfinished, because a lot of people think that Blacksash or black belt means, okay, that's it, I'm done. I did it. But it's really the first step of the next part of your journey. And my Sifu says Blacksash means you're no longer a guest on the mats. It means like now you are really home. You belong here. And so when you are a Blacksash and you line up for class, you no longer line up in the rest with the rest of the students. You line up off to the side, and it's kind of like you are there, like this is home. Everybody else is still a guest on the mats. But I was talking about just how important it is to think of this as like maybe the biggest step that you've taken so far, or just the first step in the rest of your journey, because it's a lot of pressure to be a Blacksash, and you think that you have to be perfect now. It's just not true. And it is also just a great mindset to have. I always have something else to be learning. And this is the example that my Sifu set for us. He's one of the few people I know that has multiple Blacksashes and black belts. It's very rare. He might be the only person that I know, actually, until I get my black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is, I'm not in a hurry. So to get your Blacksash and to keep showing up for class with the mindset of, I've got more to learn, I've got more to perfect myself, is a great attitude. And there were lots of great things said in the papers in the Blacksash, but there are two things that I wanted to highlight. One of them was Sifu Donahue, who I taught with and now teaches the school in Rochester, incredible martial artist and a really great talented speaker and writer. He relayed this story, and I assume that he didn't make it up because it was so good, but it's possible that he did. So this story I told in one of the classes earlier this week, and I'll tell it now. So this is many years ago in Japan, and a samurai is living in a small village out in the country in Japan. And he lives there with his family, his wife and his son. And one day, a white and black tiger, a massive tiger, comes to the village and starts terrorizing the village. And he starts mauling and killing people. And they are having a very hard time defending the villagers and stopping this from happening. And then one day when the samurai is out of the village, the tiger comes and kills his family. The tiger comes and kills his son and his wife. And the samurai is overcome with grief, but more than anything, this need to avenge and put his family to rest. So he decides that he's going to go out and hunt this tiger. And he is out with his bow and his arrow day after day, week after week, month after month. And finally, one day, he spots the tiger. And the tiger is asleep at the mouth of a cave. And the samurai from a distance notches his bow, his arrow and his bow, and he pulls back. And he pulls it back with all of his strength, with tears in his eyes and just a fire in his heart. He looses the arrow. It sails and it sinks into the tiger's flesh. It drives deep into the tiger. The tiger remains still. And the samurai walks up, and as he gets closer, he sees that it's not the tiger at all. It's a giant boulder that has the same color, black and white, as the tiger did. And the samurai at this point decides, I'm never going to find this tiger. Maybe he's found some kind of peace, maybe not, but he returns to the village. And even though he didn't kill the tiger, he is famous now as the samurai who can shoot an arrow into a boulder, which is an impossibility. And they've seen his arrow in the boulder. They know he can do this, but every time he tries to repeat this feat, the arrow just bounces off, breaks. And that's the end of the story. But the message or the moral is that if we are determined enough, if we have enough, a strong enough intention, if we have the will and the fire, we can make the impossible possible. And the message that Sifu Donahue was giving us and was relating this to was the impossibility of the Blacksash test. And the impossibility really of so many things that we will do in our practice. You can show up to the first night and see somebody do ogoshi and just throw somebody through the air. And you would think to yourself, that's impossible. I will never be able to do that. You can see somebody else do it, but you think, never for me. I won't be able to do it. Yet, if you decide, as impossible as that was, I'm going to try and keep coming to class day after day, week after week, month after month, maybe year after year, eventually you'll be able to hit it. And eventually you'll be able to do incredible things that you never would have thought were possible. In fact, they were impossible until you had the determination and the strength of will to go through it. Massacre Mondays come to mind. The really hard tests that we take come to mind. And if you saw what the Blacksash test was and you said to yourself, impossible, I'll never be able to do that. You're right, in that moment, you probably would not be able to do it. I don't know if it would kill you or not, but it'd be close. But if you go through the journey and you prepare yourself, it is possible, at least for many people who think that it was impossible at some point. It can become possible. And I thought that story was a really great analogy for what it is. That samurai never would have thought that he could pierce a boulder with an arrow until he did it. And he was never able to do it again because he lacked that same kind of just absolute determination and will. But what we want is to be able to keep that. Now, I think if I had to do a Blacksash test today, it might really hurt. But given enough opportunity to prep for it again, I'm sure I'd be fine. The last thing I want to talk about was also something that a different Blacksash said as part of his paper, Jeremiah Savage. And some of you remember a couple years ago, I went back for his test, and he's an incredible martial artist. He really lives up to his name, Savage. He is so much fun to practice with and to watch. And I got the pleasure of practicing with him over the week as well. But he was the only Blacksash who was not able to be there for this test. And he really tried to be there, but he was standing up in his friend's wedding at that exact time that the Camisa was. So he was there. He left like the rehearsal dinner and got there early and practiced the night before, but couldn't be there the actual Camisa time. But he wrote a paper and he sent it along, and Miss Donahue read it. And there's a lot of great stuff in it, but the main thing that I remember from this paper goes back to this idea of being a great partner. And it was very sweet and very terrifying to listen to. He said that even though I can't be there tonight, I want you to know that on Wednesday when we were sparring and it was 5-on-1 and they held you down, I punched you 5 times hard in the chest to make sure that I left a bruise so that a little bit of me was with you on this night for the Camisa. And when we were practicing China and I ripped a little bit of you off, I took that with me so that I could have a little bit of you with me tonight. I don't know how much of that is true and if Savage had a little bit of John under his fingernails that night or not, but I'm sure at least a little bit. This is the kind of bond that we form with each other as we practice. And a lot of people who practice martial arts love to say you never really know somebody unless you've practiced with them. The word that most people use is fight. Until you fight somebody, you don't really know them. They don't know you. I don't like the word fight. I like practice. But when it's intense and you share that sweat, and sometimes it's tears and sometimes it's blood and sometimes it's bruises and hardly ever is anything breaking. But when you share that intense practice with somebody, especially over years, and when you trust this person, sometimes with your life as they're holding that choke and you tap, this incredible bond is formed. And it is very strong. And it is something, I will say, I can go years without talking to somebody who I've practiced with intensely. And when I see them again, it feels like I'm seeing my brother or my sister. It feels like no time has passed and we can jump right back in where we left off with that last choke. It's an incredible feeling and something that, again, unfortunately, very few people in this world get to experience is this kind of connection and this kind of bond with somebody. And I'm making it sound like it's all about the violence, but that's the smallest part of it. It is all about the giving of yourself to somebody else. It is all about that setting aside of your ego and being present with somebody. And one of the things that John said on Thursday night was, I'm going to paraphrase, but it was not only his test, and he could not do it by himself. It's something that we all do together. So every time that anybody tests, or every time that somebody defends themselves successfully out in the world, or every time somebody takes what we learn on the mats and applies it to a really tough situation in life, this is something that we all can kind of celebrate, and we are all kind of there for, whether we physically have a little bit of you under our fingernails or not. We're all there doing that, and we should all celebrate it. So the Blacksash test, it's impossible to do by yourself. You need people. It is really the whole dojo is able to celebrate and be part of it, whether they're there that night or not. And as we meditate tonight, it is, so first of all, you should know that one of the hardest parts of the Blacksash test is a 3-hour-long meditation. You meditate sitting still, no movement. Some of you right now are hearing that and thinking, impossible, I'll never be able to do that. And you're probably right. Tonight, if you had to do it, you wouldn't be able to. But practice, and with enough time. I know Tanya did a 3-hour meditation within the last few days. Was that yesterday? So it's possible, even if you're in Paris. We're not going to do 3 hours tonight. We're going to do like 15 minutes. But even this, you get to sit in the dojo, or you get to sit kind of even at home in the energy of this place and with these people. There is something really great about meditating together. And whether you're meditating at home on your own or you're meditating with us, just kind of allow yourself to feel this community and energy that we all bring to this meditation together. This is never something that we're doing by ourselves for ourselves, whether it's our physical practice or our internal practice. And this is one of my favorite motivations for meditation. Is sure, I meditate so that I can be a great example for the students, but I like to meditate just to be the best version of myself for the rest of the world. I'm good for myself. I'm happy. I could die. I mean, please don't. But I could die today or tomorrow, and I feel really happy with the life that I've led. But for me to be the best version of myself, as long as I'm still going to be here, I may as well do that for everybody else. This is one of the things that really motivates me to keep meditating. And, maybe it's whatever degree of enlightenment I'll get to. Maybe it is just like to set the example for everybody else. But to meditate for yourself is kind of hollow and will not get you that far. You'll get to a point pretty early on where you feel like you've made enough progress for yourself, and it's like, okay. But to meditate for your fellow students, for the people that you might go home to, the people who you practice with in the dojo, and the people that you'll meet for the rest of your life, meditate for them. Make this the best meditation that you can, and bring all their energy in, and then carry it with you into your meditation and everything else for the rest of your life. Sit comfortably.